We're now going to cover some personal boundaries training. As a volunteer in a support organisation, how we react to certain situations we encounter can be very different to how we would react with our friends or with our family. Essentially, personal boundaries are the difference between being friendly and being a friend. Of course, we want you to be friendly, but as a volunteer, those that we support may misconstrue signals, and occasionally they might think that's more and that you are being their friend. So it's essential that we have some boundaries to show what is and what isn't okay. Being part of the feed, we're all in a position of trust. Those we support need to know that we have their best interests at heart and the work that we do is not going to impact them negatively. Boundaries also protect the welfare of yourself as well as service users. Boundaries preserve your physical and emotional energy, and they clarify what is and isn't your responsibility as a volunteer. You're getting this training from us now, but those that we support don't, and the best way to teach others about healthy boundaries is by maintaining your own. These boundaries apply to all our volunteers and to staff too. So why do we need boundaries? Well, many of the people we work with and support are experiencing challenging circumstances. Examples could include abuse, that could be physical or emotional. It could be financial stress, anxiety, neglect, disability, substance or alcohol dependency, and/or mental ill health. These may be things that have happened in the past or be an ongoing situation and not always obvious. It is important that our behaviour does not impact anyone negatively. We'll cover some more of this in our safeguarding training. So there are 4 different types of boundaries. There's physical boundaries. That's our proximity and touching. Emotional boundaries, our thoughts, beliefs and opinions. Material boundaries, which are our possessions and time. And mental boundaries, which are our feelings. So what I'd like to do now is just highlight the risks of crossing boundaries. I always position boundaries as being like stood on the edge of a riverbank. If you go too far towards the edge, then that can endanger yourself or cause issue for yourself or for somebody else. What boundaries can also do when we cross them is discourage connection to more appropriate help. They can also create dependency, which is then experienced as a loss or grief when removed. And it can also alienate other people. There's a risk to welfare, either to yourself or to those we support. And it does make it much more difficult to set limits and manage behaviour. What we'll do now is give some examples of different scenarios where boundaries could be crossed. We'd like you to think about how you would react whilst maintaining these healthy boundaries. We'll follow each example with some key messages and suggestions. So example 1. While you're volunteering, Jeff comes to you in a highly agitated state and appears quite upset. He says he'll calm down if you give him a tenner for some cigarettes. Or can he have a fag from you? So think about how you'd respond in this situation. What are the risks? Given that we've just been through some of those, do we think that's okay? How would you respond? Well, what we'd say is that volunteers shouldn't enter into any financial transactions with clients. So that's anything that's worth money. You could replace cigarettes in this previous example with anything. That could be a book, it could be a pound, your mobile phone, or a cigarette. The danger is you run the risk of showing favouritism and the requests will never stop. And of course, when you're trying to be firmer with them in another scenario, it will be much harder for you. So we advise to say under our policy that as a volunteer, you are not allowed to give or accept anything. We hope that sets a healthy boundary and shows that if this person asked another volunteer, they'd get the same response, as that's our policy. So example 2, you're working with Chris, and Chris is struggling with his relationship. He wants some help, but doesn't know where to start. This is an example of showing something that you've got experience of yourself, and how much is it appropriate to disclose about yourself. So in this instance, in your past, you've also had similar difficulties and found a route through. So how much information is it appropriate to share? And what are the risks of this type of disclosure? Well, we would say to limit your disclosure to what will benefit the service user. As a support organisation, being focused and thinking about the other person is why we're here. So limit your disclosure to what's going to benefit them, but be prepared that anything you do say may well be shared in ways and places beyond your control. So you could expect to hear what you say again and again. But you can always tell your line manager, the volunteer coordinator, or any other member of staff if you've ever got any concerns. We're here to support you through things like this. Here's another example. You're working with Aaron, and Aaron has sent you a friend request on Facebook. What do? Is there a time when being a Facebook friend is appropriate? And what are the issues raised here? Well, here are the key messages for this. Volunteers should certainly be consistent, and our role doesn't include us being friends. Think back to what we said at the start. Friendly, not friends. You should say that our policy does not allow you to be friends on Facebook or any other sites. And again, tell your line manager or a member of staff if you have any concerns. Here's another example. You've discovered you've got a shared interest in crime novels with Laura. You talk at length about a book you've both read and tell her that she'd love the book you're currently reading. Laura asks if she can borrow the book when you've finished reading it. Now, of course, if that was your friend or family, you'd probably quite happily lend the book. But what we would say is that staff and volunteers should not share personal belongings with clients. Again, you run the risk of showing favouritism and the request will never stop. It makes it difficult to be firmer with them in another scenario. So again, please say, as a volunteer, I'm not allowed to give, loan or accept anything. What you can do though is suggest alternative places where Laura could buy or borrow the book. For example, are you a member of the library? Or I have seen this book in a charity shop along the road. If Laura then needs some help to join the library, that's something that you could signpost and speak to a member of staff about, and we'll see where we can help. So remember, as a volunteer, our focus is on supporting others. We want you to enjoy your time and not be negatively impacted. And we appreciate personal boundaries could be new and different for you. But this is why we place so much importance on personal boundaries. Remember, as a volunteer, we're here to support you too. So if you have any concerns, any questions, or unsure about anything in this training, feel free to speak to either the volunteer coordinator or a member of staff. We'll be pleased to help you.